What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing you another video. This one gonna be my week 6 battle for the MWPA. This week we're taking on nvey, coach of the Ecruteak Nightshades. Coming into this battle we're sitting at 4-1, looking like in a pretty good position for playoffs with a couple more wins here. nvey on the other hand is kind of right on the outskirts there and definitely needs to pick up a win here to have a good shot at making playoffs later on. Still a difficult matchup for us, definitely not taking anybody lightly in this league. Very competitive league for sure. But yeah, let's just get right into the team builders here. So looking at what nvey's got, he has available the Garchomp, Mega Gallade, Thunderous Incarnate, Suicune, Scizor, Sylveon, Scolipede, Decidueye, Sneasel, Aerodactyl, and Magmortar. Just looking on paper, Mega Gallade is a huge threat versus my team. If it's running like Poison Jab, Close Combat, Zen Headbutt, Knockoff, something like that, just like a 4 attacks type of Mega Gallade, or Ice Punch I guess if he wants to, that's a huge threat for my team for sure. The only things I have that naturally outspeed it are Ribombee, Raikou, and Mega Aerodactyl. And I would potentially speed tie with Latios, I guess, but it would force out things like my Heatran, potentially force out my Bulu with Poison Jab, would body my Conkeldurr, my Tentacruel, my Staraptor, assuming it's not Choice Scarf. Like, really just don't have a great matchup in general versus Gallade. It also forces out my Mamoswine pretty hard. I was very, very scared of Mega Gallade. I was also very scared of Scizor. Scizor seemed like a pretty reasonable defensive response to my Mamoswine and to my Mega Aerodactyl. My Tapu Bulu, even my Latios, if I'm not carrying HP Fire, which I am. Scizor seems like a pretty good response to all those things, so I was kind of expecting to see it, maybe like a Spadef variant of Scizor or an Akaberry Scizor that could help take on Latios as well. Something like that I was kind of expecting to see Scizor for sure, but definitely glad to not see it. Sneasel's another Pokemon that I was pretty scared of. My Latios obviously does not appreciate Sneasel, and neither does my Mega Aerodactyl if it's chipped a little bit. My Bulu doesn't appreciate taking Icicle Crashes. Like, Life Orb or Banded Sneasel is actually kind of scary versus me. And Scolipede is one other kind of monster threat. If it gets up a speed boost and it's the right, like if it's carrying the right coverage, it could definitely be a huge problem for my team. Like if he's running something like Poison Jab, Mega Horn, Aqua Tail SD or something like that with Z Aqua Tail, that could be highly problematic for my team going forward. So I have to prevent that thing from setting up for sure. Alright, well, oh, and one other thing I wanted to point out was his team is, like most teams in this league, very fast. He's got, what, 6 Pokemon over base 100 speed, and only 3 below the base 80 mark, so pretty fast team in general. I felt like Sticky Webs had a pretty decent matchup here, would slow down things like the Gallade, the Garchomp, the Scolipede, Sneasel, all those things getting slowed down by Sticky Webs would be really good for me. So that was kind of one of the first things I added to my team here in Ribombee. We got Grace the Ribombee here running Sticky Web, HP Fire, Moonblast, and Quiver Dance. Focus Sash, just a guarantee that I can get up the Sticky Webs at some point during the game. I should outspeed everything on his team, bar the Aerodactyl, which could obviously potentially taunt me, but I don't want to be staying in on that thing anyways. Running max special attack, just enough speed to creep the Sneasel. Rest dumped into HP. The idea behind the Ribombee is that I can still pressure him with Quiver Dance if I want to, but the main point is there to get up Sticky Webs to slow down the Mega Gallade, slow down the Garchomp. And this is actually a decent offensive check to those Pokemon as well with Moonblast if they're a little bit weakened. So Ribombee here has potential to sweep, but like I mentioned, I was expecting to see the Scizor. Since I don't see the Scizor on the other side of the field, that actually severely improves the chances Ribombee can sweep here. But definitely not something I was anticipating going into the match. Next up here, we've got Richard Parker the Raikou, running Leftovers Raikou with Pressure, Substitute, Calm Mind, Thunderbolt, and HP Ice. I'm running close to max HP with max speed. What this does is it allows me to take a Scald from Suicune without breaking my Substitute. So if he's like a Subtoxic variant of Suicune to take advantage of my grassy terrain, I can pretty freely sub up myself and start Calm Minding in his face unless he has Roar. And this is also kind of a decent just kind of switch into Suicune in general. If he's sub-Calm Mind himself, I could just start spamming Thunderbolt at him, and I should be able to beat that thing 1v1. Yeah, this is the idea behind Raikou. It also takes advantage of my own grassy terrain pretty well with substitutes. Sub plus Leftovers is just really good recovery for the Raikou over the course of the match. This thing's a huge threat to him if I'm able to get behind a substitute and get 1 or 2 boosts going. Next up here we've got Tapu Bulu coming with Kebia Berry, of course, Grassy Surge, Hornleech, Woodhammer, Stone Edge, and Bulk Up. The Kebia Berry allows me to eat Poison Jab from Garchomp, allows me to eat Poison Jab from Mega Gallade, allows me to eat Poison Jab from Scolipede, and I can just whack those things in return. Those things are all really big offensive threats to my team, so if I can get up a Bulk Up here, I can OHKO any of those things from full with my investment, and obviously be able to eat the Poison Jabs in return. Basically, the idea is just to click Woodhammer on Garchomp and on Mega Gallade if I'm in on them, and I can live with my Kebia Berry. And then if I'm in on Scolipede, the idea is to click Stone Edge if I can live with the Kebia Berry. So basically denying setup to the Scolipede, and also making sure I don't have to switch in too many things to Garchomp or to Mega Gallade, which would be otherwise pretty difficult for me to do. Bulk Up is actually really nice versus his team too, because if I start bulking up, things like Sneasel's not going to knock me out, things like Scolipede's not going to knock me out, and I can start Horn Leeching up on things and keeping myself healthy that way, and it could actually become pretty problematic for him. If I'm like +1 with my Kebia Berry intact, he might have to sack 2 Mons to get me, depending on how many things he's running poison coverage on. So that's kind of the idea behind the Tapu Bulu there. Just pretty bulky overall Tapu Bulu, with a little bit of investment into defense and attack to make sure I live some hits with my Kebia Berry. Next up here, we've got Jetstream Eladios, looking to take advantage of sticky webs here with Latios. We've got Life Orb, Psyshock, Ice Beam, HP Fire, and Roost. Opted for Psyshock over Psychic, mainly because of the potential for Calm Mind Suicune. Also hits a couple other things harder, like Mega Gallade, Magmortar have lower physical defense stats than they have special defense stats. Ice Beam's there to hit specifically things like the Garchomp and the Thundurus, and also I guess Aerodactyl to some extent, if I'm looking to stay in on that. And then HP Fire's there just for the Scizor, which I thought was kind of a decent switch into Latios in general, so I felt like I had to pack HP Fire there. Roost is just there for predicting switches, so if I have Sticky Webs up and I don't think he's going to want to sack like his Mega Gallade, for example, I can predict that and go for Roost as he switches out, and then just proceed to come in later in the game. Obviously, Roost is nice to heal off some of the Life Orb chip I'll be taking over the course of the match with my Latios. Next up here is Vulcan the Heatran. We're in Shukaberry Heatran with Stealth Rock, Toxic, Lava Plume, and Roar. So bring Roar Heatran once again. Like I mentioned, I don't want to get set up on by that Scolipede. This also means I can't get set up on by Suicune. If I'm feeling so inclined, I can stay in and try to Toxic the Suicune, and if he goes for Substitute, I'll be expecting him to go for Calm Mind next, and I can just roar him out afterwards. Or if he stays in and goes for Scald, I'll at least have gotten a Toxic off on the Suicune, which is really good for a lot of my stuff in the back, specifically my Mega Aerodactyl. So getting a Toxic off on that thing would be really huge for me. Stealth Rock's just nice to chip down his team. He's got quite a few rock weaknesses, things like Thundurus, Magmortar, Sneasel. All don't appreciate Stealth Rocks being up. Scolipede, all do not appreciate Stealth Rocks being up. Shukaberry allows me to live Earthquake from Scolipede, and allows me to live Earthquake from Garchomp under grassy terrain. Not that I really am doing much back to Garchomp, but if need be, I can live an Earthquake from Garchomp. Shukaberry may not have been the absolute best option, but I felt like he might pack Earthquake on his Scolipede, and I believe I live an Aqua Tail from neutral. So he'd have to go for Earthquake to try and knock me out, and the Shukaberry should prevent that from happening. I can go for Lava Plume and hit that thing really hard, potentially even snagging a burn on it. Last up here, we've got Mega Aerodactyl once again, running Ice Fang, Stone Edge, Wing Attack, and Defog. I originally had Toxic on here to catch the Suicune, and I also kind of wanted to run Roost to make sure I'm out of range of things like Bullet Punch and Ice Shard later in the game. But in general, I felt like Defog was just kind of important, because in a prep match versus me, John brought Toxic Spikes on his Scolipede, which was actually kind of a huge problem for my Bulu and my Raikou specifically. I just really didn't want to have to deal with Toxic Spikes, so the idea is to defog away Toxic Spikes if he decides to set them up, and then get up Sticky Webs later in the game, and hopefully just clean with Mega Aerodactyl. Mega Aerodactyl can do it here. Ice Fang hits the Garchomp really hard, and even hits the Thundurus pretty hard. If after Stealth Rocks, it should knock it out, so I don't have to risk missing a Stone Edge. Ice Fang is much more accurate, but Stone Edge is there just for things like Magmortar, things like a full health Thundurus, things like Scolipede. If I need to, I'll click Stone Edge. I do have Wing Attack though. It's mostly there to pressure out the Mega Gallade, but also doubles as good coverage for the Scolipede. Alright, well, without further ado, let's get right into the match here. As you can see, he brought the Garchomp, Suicune, Decidueye, Aerodactyl, Thundurus, and Scolipede. So thankfully, no Mega Gallade. Thankfully, no Scizor. One thing that I'm kind of noticing right off the bat is that Sticky Webs are no longer very good against him. They really only affect the Scolipede and the Garchomp in any kind of significant way. Obviously, they do affect the Suicune and the Decidueye, but speed-wise, the only things that they're really helping me out with are Scolipede and with Garchomp. But because he doesn't have the Scizor, that means Ribombee actually has pretty good potential to sweep here. If I can get +1 with Rocks Up or +2 without Rocks Up, I'm a huge threat to his team, actually, with Ribombee here, is what I'm realizing at the beginning of the match. So I don't want to risk that thing early game like I might otherwise would have to get Sticky Webs up. I'd rather keep it in the back a little bit. So expecting him to try and kind of anti-lead my Ribombee. I don't expect him to lead with something like the Garchomp, and I want to deny a potential kind of hazard-setting lead Scolipede. So what I'm going to do here is lead off with my Aerodactyl. So as I do, I lead off with my Aerodactyl. He actually leads off with his. And this turn actually took a long time in real time, and these Aerodactyls were just flapping at each other in this really annoying desync. Like, look at this. Wings flapping at different speeds, different timings. It was really, really tilting me. So, anyways, I have to switch out here just in case he's random Choice Scarf Aerodactyl. I don't want to lose my Aerodactyl this early in the match, so I'm going to double out to Blue here. I felt like this caught Suicune or Garchomp if you wanted to go into those things. And like I mentioned in my team builder, I'm just going to click Wood Hammer here. I do have the Kabaya Berry if he happens to have Poison Jab on his Garchomp, but I'm just going to click Wood Hammer as he goes out into the Scolipede. It actually looks like a pretty bulky variant of Scolipede, if I did my calcs correctly. So the Stone Edge is probably going to KO, but it's not necessarily guaranteed to, depending on his investment, but I can't let him set up in my face, so I'm just going to go for Stone Edge here, as he maybe overpredicts or doesn't have Poison Jab and goes for Mega Horn. I click Stone Edge here and unfortunately miss. Getting rid of the Scolipede there would have been really, really nice for me. Would have been really good for my Ribombee, would have been really good for my Aerodactyl. Pretty much my whole team really would have appreciated Scolipede being dead there. But unfortunately, I do miss the Stone Edge. It happens, it's Pokemon. I'm just going to click Stone Edge again in case he decides to stay in. I can still live a Poison Jab from this range with my Kabaya Berry. So I'm going to get some massive damage off on this Decidueye. It looks to be offensive variant of Decidueye, but that really shouldn't be able to do too much to me, and I don't think this would be his Z-move user this game. So what I'm actually going to do here is bulk up in the Decidueye's face, as he unfortunately crits me with Spirit Shackle. So what bulk up here would have done would be allow me to 2-hit KO the Decidueye and also live 2 Spirit Shackles from him in return. Now I cannot live 2 Spirit Shackles because of the crit, so I'm just going to have to Horn Leech up here and hope for a crit of my own, basically, to get rid of the Decidueye, or at least to not get rid of it, but to keep myself out of range of a second Spirit Shackle. As you can see here, that Spirit Shackle is not going to KO me from this range. I'm going to be able to get some big Horn Leech damage off on this Decidueye. I should 2-hit KO it, but as you can see, I'm just a little bit shy of living another Spirit Shackle. It's potentially a roll, I guess, but I don't know what the calc is on that. So unfortunately, Tapu Bulu is going to go down here. Crit was pretty unfortunate, I guess, for sure. So not great luck here for me to start the game, missing the Stone Edge, getting crit by the Spirit Shackle. But this does allow me to go out into Mega Aerodactyl and basically claim a KO. Even if he goes out into Suicune here, it's going to do some pretty good damage with Wing Attack. And I can get back out into my Raikou if I want to, or into my Eladios. So I'm just going to go for Wing Attack here, take care of this Decidueye, and he really only has Suicune to bring in on me. Obviously, Ice Fang threatens Garchomp. I don't think he's Choice Scarf Aerodactyl, or else he would have gone for Stone Edge turn 1. And it could potentially be Choice Scarf Thunderous, I guess, but I've got some okay switch-ins to electric moves in the back, so here I'm just going to go out into my Latios. If he starts Calm Minding, I can at least 2-hit KO this thing with Psyshock. If he starts Sub-Calm Minding, I can break his sub, so I felt like Latios was the best play here, as he does go for Substitute, and I'm just going to be able to break this thing Substitute with Psyshock, but he immediately switches out into his Thunderous, so I'm not really sure what kind of variant of Suicune that is, but he didn't even go for Scald there, so Psyshock's going to do some huge damage to this Thunderous, and I'm thinking maybe he doesn't actually knock me out with this Thunderous, so I'm just going to stay in an Ice Beam, but it turns out he is Life Orb Thunderous with knockoff, so he's going to be able to knock me out. I would actually have lived a Dark Pulse. I don't know if I would have lived Life Orb Dark Pulse, but I would have lived a neutral Dark Pulse for sure and been able to get rid of the Thunderous, but it's not such a huge deal, because I can just bring out my Mega Aerodactyl again and click Wing Attack, because that Suicune 1 does not have leftovers. Any damage on it seems to be pretty permanent. And 2 Wing Attacks should knock out Thunderous from this range. Pretty free, just to go out into Mega Aerodactyl and pick up another Revenge kill there. He's still got a couple options here, but Suicune and Garchomp seem like the most likely. Because he went out into Garchomp, I feel like this is almost definitely Scarf, which I live any hit from, except for a crit. And he's able to crit me with Outrage. So here I'm like starting to get really, really tilted, because I have not had very good luck this game. I missed the Stone Edge, got crit by the Decidueye, got crit by the Garchomp here. So I'm like sitting here like, man, now what do I do? That Aerodactyl was pretty important, But what I realize here is because he crit me with Outrage and he's guaranteed to stay in for another turn of it, and I know he's Scarf, that means I can get 2 Quiver Dances up with Ribombee here and actually just win. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out into Ribombee here. Since, like I mentioned, he's choice locked into Outrage and at least locked in for one more turn here. He has to go for Outrage, end with the Confusion there as I go for Quiver Dance, and now he's forced to switch out as I go for another one, and +2 Ribombee just cleans from here. Moonblast KOs Garchomp, Aerodactyl, and Suicune, unless he's running like AV bulky Aerodactyl or something crazy, and then HP Fire will knock out Scolipede at +2 here, so Ribombee's just going to clean. I'll speed it up a little bit for that as we go for HP Fire on the Scolipede, like I mentioned, then a 3 Moonblast to clean up the game here with Ribombee. So Grace coming through in the clutch here with Quiver Dance. Not what I expected it to be doing this game, because like I mentioned, I did expect to see the Scizor, but look at Ribombee go, picking up 4 kills here to clean up the match. I don't know if that crit mattered in the long run of things. It really didn't. If he lived anyway, he still would have died to a second Moonblast. So GG to Envy. This actually puts us at 5-1 now, so really good spot for playoffs. I think actually if I win my next week, I might be locked for playoffs. It depends on the differential, I guess, but in general, if I win the next week, I think it's pretty much a lock for playoffs at this point for me, which is nice. Ribombee coming in clutch this game. A couple things just throughout the match. I felt like Aerodactyl had a good chance at cleaning him out, basically, if I could chip the Suicune down a little bit more. Obviously, getting crit by the Garchomp meant that it went down earlier than I expected it to, but I felt like trading Aerodactyl for Garchomp at that point in the match was okay, especially because I didn't really have great switch-ins for Garchomp. If he was like Tank Chomp with Yachi Berry or something, and knows he lives in Ice Fang, and maybe that's why he went out to it. I really didn't feel like I had good switch-ins to it. I was like, well, if he locks himself into Scarf Stone Edge, I could go out into Raikou and click HP Ice. I could go out into Heatran, get him Stealth Rocks. Like, I could do at least something in return if he goes for Stone Edge and manages to crit me and knock me out. But it worked out even better because he crit me with Outrage instead. So kind of an interesting scenario where the hacks helped me out, or getting hacks to help me out in the long run. But yeah, that's it from me, guys. Just kind of a short, kind of quick sweep here. Only 19 turns with the Ribombee. Like I mentioned, this league, my games will generally be going pretty fast because my team's pretty offensive. And while it does have some bulk to it, I don't have like a lot of walls or stall potential. So in general, my games should be going pretty fast like this. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching if you did to this point. Hope to see you guys around in another video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.